On today's show, the Houston Rockets with their new worst loss of the season against the Charlotte Hornets, who are missing LaMelo Ball for half the game. The Rockets' losing streak now grows to 12 losses in a row, the new longest losing streak for this NBA season. It's time to have a discussion about the Rockets' coaching situation. It's time to make a change. Let's break it all down for you on today's Locked on Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green, Alperen, Sengun, and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
Hey, Houston fans, I am so happy.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked on NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked on Rockets, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where I desperately want to hear your thoughts on the current state of this Houston Rockets team. 12 straight losses, and honestly, it feels like it's time to move on from head coach Stephen Silas. Tell me your thoughts. Share your thoughts with me on the YouTube comments. Read each and every one of those every single day. As always, appreciate you for making LOR part of your day. Thank you for making Locked on Rockets part of your day, whether you're listening on the way to work, at the gym, on your lunch break, wherever you listen to LOR. Thank you. Sincerely appreciate it. This is the new low for the Houston Rockets, right? Like, you just lost to the Charlotte Hornets, 122-117. They didn't even have LaMelo Ball for half the game, their best player. Rockets are the worst team in the association. This is the other worst team in the association, and you just lost to them. Rock, meet, bottom. This is a new low. This is a new low for this Rockets season, right? And I mean, you could point to a handful of really bad losses, right? The Pelicans game most recently. You also had, either of the Spurs games. The collapse against the Mavericks after roaring back in the third quarter. You can point to, there have been a lot of ugly games this season. I think this one takes the cake, because it also gives the Rockets the longest losing streak record for this season in the NBA. 12 straight losses with honestly no end in sight to the losing streak. So these next 5 games are honestly, I could see the Rockets losing streak growing to 17, honestly. 2 games against Minnesota on the road, then at home. Could both be L's. Then Wizards and Cavs back-to-back, January 25th, January 26th. Those could very easily, those are definitely almost L's. And then on the road against the Pistons Saturday, January 28th, the last game of January. That, to me, is the only game that the Rockets might be favored in over these next 5. So I can very easily see the losing streak growing to at least 16, possibly 17, and then it just gets even worse after that. This is a pretty brutal schedule. And the Rockets have one of the worst schedules over the remaining course of the NBA. So they have a comfortable lead now in the tankathon race. And so while things are going according to plan in the grand scheme of things, right? In the macro, Rockets are going to be bad. They're going to get another top pick. They're almost guaranteed to be the worst record in the NBA at this point. I do not see them salvaging the situation. So they get another top pick. Cool. Macro lens, awesome. The tank is working. But in the micro, and when you look at the day-to-day, this team has zero business being this bad. And I think there's blame to go all around, honestly. I think there's blame for, most definitely there's blame for head coach Stephen Silas. I think there's also blame for the front office at this point with the way that the roster was constructed and the decision to go this aggressive with maybe young talent acquisition and not fielding at least a couple additional, veteran guys or older players, not even necessarily vets, right? Like we need a new word for players that are like just not fresh-faced, baby-faced rookies and sophomores, right? Because that's where this team is. It's brutal, right? You're trotting out 19, 20-year-olds every single night, and there's going to be issues. I get it. There's going to be defensive lapses. There's going to be breakdowns with the offensive plays. The one thing that you cannot excuse is lack of effort. And it very much feels like this team is now giving a distinct lack of effort on a night-to-night basis. And there's no discipline. There's no accountability. They're not playing hard for head coach Stephen Silas anymore. And that is troublesome. That is concerning. In a team chock full of young guys, effort should not be an issue whatsoever. That shows a loss of the locker room. That shows a lack of pride, a lack of faith and direction, whatever you want to call it. And at this point, it very much feels like the Band-Aid just needs to be ripped off. It feels like the Rockets need to move on from head coach Stephen Silas. And I sympathize with the situation that he's been put in. It's not a fun situation. Rebuilding sucks. I get it. But while the day-to-day and the struggles that this team is dealing with might not impact the long-term feel of the organization, and 2 to 3 years from now, we might look back on this and be like, oh God, remember when the Rockets were down horrendous and they had the 3 longest losing streaks 3 years in a row, 20 games, then 15 games, now 12 games with really no end in sight, right? So it's almost a certainty that the Rockets will finish with the worst losing streak of the NBA this season as well. Maybe we'll look back on this and be like, yeah, Jalen and Jabari, they panned out just fine. They turned into all-stars, all that. But right now in the day-to-day, it sucks and it feels bad for these players, right? Jalen is going through it. He's not playing with confidence. Jabari's struggling, right? The bar for Silas and the bar for Stone in the front office was set so unbelievably low for this season to just maybe don't be the worst team in the NBA again this year, right? That's all, right? Be respectably bad. And they haven't been able to even achieve that level of bad, right? This team just looks horrendous at points, right? When LaMelo Ball went out of this game, the team, it's almost like they resigned themselves to, oh, okay, Melo is out, cool. Like, we're going to win this, right? It's almost like they expected Charlotte to just give up. And credit to Charlotte, they didn't, right? They went on to win this game and embarrass the Rockets at home in what is now the worst loss of the season. Honestly, I am shocked that to this point we haven't heard anything about the Rockets considering, moving on from Stephen Silas. I definitely, there's still time and there's still, but it just feels like a change is desperately needed. And the one change that you can make mid-season that maybe motivates these guys to start playing hard again and showing a respectable level of just effort, right? Just meeting that very low bar. You move on from the head coach, right? Put in a motivator type guy, give John Lucas the interim title, maybe give it to Mahmoud Abdel-Fattah, somebody who will light a fire under these guys and at least get them playing hard on a nightly basis, right? Not getting blown out every other game, not putting up bad effort nights, actually fighting and playing with some pride, because right now they're not at this point. So that's the main takeaway from this is it's time for the Rockets to move on. I don't think there's anything else that can be done this season that's going to make me change my mind on that front. Whether the Rockets decide to move on from Stephen Silas in the middle of the season or whether they decide to do it in the offseason, I do not think it is a matter of when anymore. I do not think it is a matter of if. It is a matter of when. And the smart move would be to move on sooner rather than later, and hopefully maybe you can get some good vibes, some positive encouragement, some actual good effort and play over this back half of the season, and maybe experiment and try some different things with different lineups and a different approach for the latter half of the season. But right now it just looks and feels bad, and I feel for all the players, I feel for the coaching staff, I feel for the fans who are muddling through this part of the rebuild, because it's not fun, it's ugly, and a change is desperately needed here with the Rockets. Coming up, I want to talk about the actual game itself. The reason this game felt so bad. So many of the ugly moments, the mistakes, the lapses. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the couple encouraging signs, at least from this one. Jalen Green, Alperen, Sengun showing tremendous amount of offensive potential in this game, and how that duo, that two-man game, needs to be how this team builds moving forward. We're going to get there, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all of the fat and calories that are usually associated with it? Then you've got to try Built Bar. Look, it's the New Year's, right? You're still trying to hold on to those New Year's resolutions. If you are, at this point, if you're still going strong with your resolutions, then kudos to you. We're about 3 weeks into the new year, so credit to you. But with Built Bar, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious. You won't even think that they're good for you, right? Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in so many incredible flavors like churro, peanut butter, coconut almond, raspberry, strawberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel. You really can't go wrong with a single bar on their menu. Every single bar is low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Amazing if you're trying to cut back a little bit, lose a little bit of weight. Again, stick true to those New Year's resolutions. You can check them out. Just go to built.com. Use promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at built.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. God, I really don't want to talk. Like, just looking at this box score makes me sad, man. This is just brutal. 122, 117. Rockets gave up double-figure scoring nights to 7 Hornets players. 7 Hornets players scored in double figures against the Rockets. Not only that, LaMelo Ball had a trash game, if we're keeping it completely honest. So, like, honestly, if LaMelo hadn't gotten hurt, he might have actually given the Rockets a better chance to win this game. He was 4 of 16 from the floor, settling for some of the ugliest three-pointers that I've ever seen. He swished a couple that looked like they had no business going in, and then he was just bricking shots left and right. He played 20 minutes total. And then he and Terry Rozier combined for 5 of 20 from beyond the arc. The Hornets as a team shot 25% from beyond the three-point line. They also shot 50% from the floor and 68% from the free throw line. The Hornets across the board offensively had a worse night than the Houston Rockets. The Rockets shot half a percentage point better from the floor. The Rockets shot 6% better from long distance, 10 of 32, 31.3%. Still not good. And then 15 of 20, 75% at the free throw line. This game was so, there were so many points of this game that were just comically bad. Like the series in the middle of the game where there were 3 dunk attempts in a row, and it was dunk attempt 1 by the Rockets, miss. Dunk attempt by the Hornets, miss. Then another dunk attempt by the Rockets, and this one was Jabari Smith Jr., who was fouled on the dunk attempt, went to the free throw line, hit his free throws, and then hobbled off the court because he came down wrong on his ankle. And I hope Jabari Smith Jr. is okay, but we don't have an update on him. There's no timetable on his ankle injury. And considering, I actually don't even know if it's the same ankle that was bothering him preseason that kept him out for the rest of Rockets preseason after the preseason opener. But I hope it's not the same ankle, because again, that could mean Jabari's now going to be missing a significant amount of time. And if that's the case, then the Rockets are most certainly going to roll out a lineup, because there's still no timetable on the return for Kevin Porter Jr., who's struggling with his left foot contusion. Apparently he's having trouble pushing off and jumping off his big toe. And we got that update pregame before the Hornets game. So the Rockets starting lineup, minus KPJ, minus Jabari Smith Jr. for the very next game against the Timberwolves, could very legitimately be Jalen Green, Eric Gordon, KJ Martin, Jae'Sean Tate, Alperen Sengun. An incredibly undersized lineup with 2 guards and 2 forwards. And Alp's already an undersized center. And then you're running KJ Martin and Jae'Sean Tate as your 3-4. I don't even want to think about that for now. And it also then at that point, the rest of the roster starts looking really rough because you don't have any punch coming off the bench at that point. I hope that Jabari's okay, and maybe I hope KPJ can get back to the lineup, because otherwise these next few games may be really, really brutal. But the issue in this game was just the Rockets couldn't defend at all. They gave up so many easy buckets, so many defensive breakdowns, so many wide open threes that the Hornets just were clanking left and right. I mean, they couldn't hit anything. They couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. You come up with whatever analogy you want, whatever metaphor for how bad the Hornets were shooting in this game. And that's how bad they were shooting in this game. In fact, they were probably shooting worse than whatever metaphor you can come up with, because I lost track of the number of wide open shots that the Hornets were getting that were just missing, hilariously bad at points. And then even on the Rockets side, offensively, Jalen and Alp had it going, but then it was comedic. Some of the misses and the moments from other guys like Eric Gordon airballing stuff, Tari Eason back to the Tari that couldn't hit anything around the rim. Garrison Matthews, his wings have been clipped yet again, 1 of 4 shooting. There was a moment where the Rockets, out of a timeout set, generated a really good shot, some really good ball movement, everything. And then it turned into a Garrison Matthews corner 3-point shot, and he just bricked it and came down on the other end and was so furious with himself, was just pounding the ball 3-4 times in a row, so frustrated with himself. And then on the very next defensive possession, actually fouled a 3-point shooter and gave the Hornets a 4-point opportunity. I forget which player got fouled actually in the moment, but whoever it was went to the free throw line and missed the free throw, thankfully. But I mean, Gary Bird, miss a 3 on one end, give up a 3, possibly 4-point play on the other end. It was just not a great sequence whatsoever. This was a really ugly game top to bottom. And again, there's going to be moments defensively where this is a young Rockets team, right? They're going to have lapses. They're going to have issues. You're going to have the wrong rotations, or guys are going to be in the wrong spots, or you're going to be switching and you get confused and you give up buckets that way. But the effort is so abysmal at this point from this team. And they also don't match up in certain regards. Like Mark Williams looked like prime Shaq out there against this Rockets team. He had 17 points, matching his career high, tying his career high, 8 of 10 shooting off the Hornets bench. He had 6 boards and 5 blocks. He had a career high 5 blocks. PJ Washington had 3 blocks in this game. That might be a career high for him. I mean, some of the attempts that the Rockets were trying to get up around the rim, give me a pump fake, give me a spin, give me anything other than I'm just going to go straight up with it into this monster, 7-foot frame big man and expect him not to swat my shot all the way out to the 5th row. God, this game was brutal. I don't know. If you made it through this game, if you sat through this game start to finish, I applaud you, because this was not an easy one to watch start to finish. Even with the little fake comeback at the end of the game that the Rockets had, and they looked like they might, were maybe gonna, come back and steal the game at the very, very end. You know what? I know I already asked in the YouTube comments. Tell me your thoughts on where the Rockets are at, the state of the franchise, Stephen Silas, all that. Tell me anything that you would have rather been doing other than watching this game. What would have been more fun? I feel like getting my wisdom teeth pulled out again would have been more fun than this game. So give me examples like that. Like what else would you have rather been doing? What is the worst thing that you would have rather been doing than watching this specific Rockets game? Let me know in the YouTube comments. But I do want to talk about the couple positives from this game. I know this is the feel of this episode. We're down in the dumps. We're going through it. This is not a great spot for the team to be in right now. And whatever the opposite of Cloud 9 is, that's where this team is at. So I do want to share a little bit. We'll try to end on some positivity here in the show. We're going to get there. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to basketball to NFL playoffs to MLB, which is right around the corner. They've got you covered for everything over at BetOnline. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your sports betting info. Head over to betonline.net right now to take a look at who the odds-on favorites are for the NBA title this season. Spoiler alert. The Rockets are nowhere near the top 5. However, Boston Celtics leading the way right now at plus 400. You got the Milwaukee Bucks right behind them at plus 750. Then you got a pair of teams tied, Brooklyn Nets and Denver Nuggets, both at plus 800 a piece. Actually, I apologize. It's 3 teams tied to round out the top 5. The Golden State Warriors also at plus 800. And then the Memphis Grizzlies bringing up that 6th spot at plus 1,000. So for all those odds and more, be sure to visit betonline.net to learn about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, the little bit of positivity that we can draw from this game, because you gotta be able to find the good in all the bad. And the good here, and the good that we have been able to point to routinely this season. First off, Jalen Green looked insanely good offensively. For all the grief, for all the struggles, for all the issues defensively, the lack of effort, the body language, whatever, it was good to see a game where Jalen could actually just do his thing again. And some of that is because the Hornets are just also a trash defensive team. But it was nice to see him scoring in a variety of ways, scoring at all 3 levels. He had 41 points, tying his career high. He was so close to setting a new career high. I'm kind of glad that he didn't set a new career high in this game, because that would have been kind of depressing, honestly. But 41 points, tying his career high, 16 of 24 shooting from the floor, 4 of 10 from three-point range, 5 of 6 at the charity stripe, had 5 boards, 7 assists, 4 turnovers. Was a +4 in his time on the floor. Like, in this like ridiculously close game, of all the starters, there were only 2 starters that were, or I apologize, 3 starters were positive. Alp was a +2, Jalen was a +4, and Jabari was a +1. But KJ Martin was -11, and Eric Gordon was a horrendous team worst -21 points in this game. The lineups that were out there that had like EG and the bench unit basically kind of lost this game for the Rockets. The Hornets bench certainly outplayed the certain key contributors off the Hornets bench outplayed the Rockets bench for sure. Like Mark Williams +11, McGowan's +13 off the Hornets bench. Is a brutal game. Jae'Sean Tate was a +14 off the Rockets bench, impacting the game in a positive fashion. But for Jalen Green, it was nice to see him have another like alpha scoring performance, even considering the opponent, just because hopefully this is the type of the game that can get him out of his offensive funk. And hopefully build him back up and get him going again. He's looked really good offensively over this like most recent three game stretch by the Rockets without Kevin Porter Jr. because he's able to just kind of, I think, be himself again offensively. And there's some good with that. There's some bad with that. Obviously, the Rockets are losing at an obscene rate right now, but in that losing rate, how do certain players look, right? And at least for Jalen Green, it's nice to see him having some success again offensively and maybe hopefully getting out of his own head so that he can just be the alpha level scorer that the Rockets know that he's capable of being. And then also the flip side of that is Alperen Sengun, who continues to look really, really, really good. 24 points on 10 of 16 shooting, missed his only 3-point attempt, 4 of 4 at the free throw line, 12 rebounds, including 5 offensive boards, had 6 assists, 2 steals, and a block, and 3 turnovers in his 39 minutes of play. So another huge minute night for Alperen Sengun. So that has been a more than welcome development to see Alp playing so many minutes. And the issue at this point is this Rockets team is going to look like a disaster defensively no matter what they do. Again, you cannot excuse the effort, right? It's one thing to just be a bad defensive team because you don't know what you're doing defensively. That's fine. You're going to be a bad team. You're going to be bottom 5 in defense. Fine. Live with that. Can't live with the terrible effort defensively in conjunction with also not knowing what you're doing because then it just looks, again, horrendous, comical, whatever. You do not give yourself a chance to win a game because honestly, so much of defense is just effort, right? You might not actually know the scheme. You might not actually know how to rotate properly. You might not know where the low man is supposed to be, or if you're supposed to be rotating over to help on a pick and roll. Like you might not know how your weak side coverages are supposed to look. Doesn't matter. If you're just trying hard, you're going to be able to have some positive impact on the game on the defensive end. And that's the issue right now with this Rockets team is you've got Jalen, who is a bad defender currently. You've got Alp, who is a bad to neutral defender currently. Or both of those guys, bad to neutral defenders, right? Jabari shows flashes of being a good defender, but he's also 19. And he overhelps, and he has issues, and he, this, that, and the other thing. KJ Martin has improved as an individual, like, man-to-man defender, but is still not a great defender. Eric Gordon has been so up and down this season, whether he's like motivated or not motivated. And if he's locked in, then yeah, he can still defend, but he also gives up a lot of stuff defensively as well because he's just not trying at this point. It's really, really bad on the defensive side. But you can, again, can't excuse the effort, but at least you can maybe put a better offensive product out there and give yourself a chance to be in some of these games like they were against the Clippers, like they were for portions of the Kings games, right? By leaning heavily into the 2-man offensive game of Jalen Green and Alp, right? Like those two guys, that is what the Rockets offense should be geared around. It shouldn't be geared around perimeter-oriented play and isolation and all that. They need to build their offensive identity around the 2-man game of Alp and Jalen Green. And I think that'll make life easier for Jalen. I think it'll make life easier for Alp. And then like just long-term picture, right, is even if Jalen and Alp do continue to struggle defensively, right? Nobody's asking them to be positive defensive players over the course of their career. Although I think Jalen has the tools to do it. And I think Alp has the basketball IQ and the ability to at least get to a place where he is a neutral defender consistently. You put 3+ defenders around those two guys. First off, the offensive ceiling is incredibly high with those two players. And then you put 3+ defenders around those guys, and you're really cooking at that point. But right now, the Rockets do not have 3+ defenders around them. They've got a ton of other young guys around them, and that's leading to the defense looking even worse, right? That's leading to, right, you've got bad perimeter defense, which then makes Alp look even worse as an interior defender. It just all kind of snowballs and looks really, really bad. But there's something there, man, with the talent that these guys have offensively. There is something there for sure. And seeing them be able to go out and have these insanely productive nights, even with the catastrophe that has been the defense, at least that can be an encouraging thing. Because if you plug and play, if you plug the right pieces around them, then you've got something there, right? Jalen Green has that alpha tier 1 scoring talent. Alp has the ability to be kind of an offensive engine where you can reliably and consistently use him to generate good looks both for himself and for his teammates, right? Think, again, the Sacramento Kings system. So even in a loss as ugly as this one against the Charlotte Hornets, it was encouraging to see those two guys have some really, really solid offensive performances. And it's just a reminder that they do have talent and that duo has built a really good chemistry with one another. And that needs to be the focal point of the Rockets' kind of offensive identity moving forward. Now, the only other positive that we can kind of take from this game, thankfully, we get to do a tankathon spin. And it's like a consolation prize at this point because these losses are just getting harder and harder to deal with. But we get to run a tankathon spin. Rockets have clear-cut the best lottery odds at this point. The lowest that their pick can fall is number 5. They have a combined 28% chance at one of Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson. And right now, that's where a lot of the hope is being pinned on for this Rockets season is that you're going through the muck, you're wading through the day-to-day of this, and it's really rough. But at least the light at the end of the tunnel is procuring another top pick. And if it's 3, 4, or 5, potentially trading that pick and trading it for a veteran piece, whatever, who knows. But at pick 1 or 2, you get a franchise-altering talent. So 28% chance. Let's see how we're feeling. In your head, tell yourself, make a prediction right now before I hit the spin button about where this pick is going to ultimately land. Let me see what we got and run it. Oh, man. I guess it's fitting that the pick would land where it does. All the way down at number 5. You know what? I guess that's just on brand for this episode, right? That's how rough this episode has been. The Lakers pick jumps up 7 spots to number 1, which conveys to the Pelicans. So the Pelicans land Wemby. Charlotte jumps up a spot to number 2. Detroit at number 3. Toronto jumps up a couple spots to number 4. And the Rockets are all the way down at pick number 5. Man, this has not been a great episode. I'm sorry if this episode was depressing if you're going through it, because I certainly am at this point. But look, light at the end of the tunnel. Season's more than halfway over. Yeah, I just, you know what? We'll shift gears. Our next episode, we'll do some draft content or something. We'll take a brief reprieve from this Rockets team, unless there's maybe some breaking news about a potential head coaching change for this Rockets organization. Because I'll tell you what, it would actually be some like Greek tragedy level stuff if Stephen Silas' last game as the Rockets head coach was actually against the team that he started his NBA career with in Charlotte. That would be just, I don't want to quite call it poetry because it's not poetry. It's not pretty. It'd be very ugly and sad, but there's still a possibility that happens. So, I would be on maybe not like DEFCON 5 alert, but potentially on the lookout for that Stephen Silas news before the next Rockets game that they take the court for. And if they do take the court again, if they haven't made a coaching change after this loss, I would bank on there not being a coaching change between now and the end of the season. I had this game circled as the game that was probably going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, and it hasn't happened yet to this point. So we'll see. We'll keep tabs. We will monitor the situation. But as always, just like all of you who muddled your way through that Rockets game, I appreciate you for sticking to the end of this podcast. I know it wasn't easy. It's a rough podcast. It's a rough time right now for the Rockets. But I do appreciate you sticking with the show. I appreciate you listening, tuning in. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so. Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app. Free and available, all platforms, including YouTube. which I asked you for a couple YouTube comments today. So go let me know your thoughts on YouTube. Search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.